There's something strange about McDonald's that most people never notice. You walk into their restaurants, you order burgers and fries, you see the golden arches everywhere. Everything about the company screams fast food. But if you actually look at where McDonald's makes its money, you'll discover something surprising. This isn't really a restaurant company at all. It's a real estate business that happens to sell hamburgers. This sounds bizarre at first, but when you understand the actual business model, when you see how the money flows, it becomes clear that McDonald's greatest innovation wasn't about food, it was about property. And this realization came from one man's financial struggles and another man's brilliant insight. Let me walk you through how this happened, because it's one of the smartest business strategies ever executed. The story begins in 1954 with a man named Ray Kroc. He was 52 years old at the time, selling milkshake machines to restaurants across America. It wasn't a particularly exciting career. He made a decent living, but nothing remarkable. Then something unusual happened. He received an order for 8 milkshake machines from a single restaurant. This was strange because most restaurants only needed 1 or 2 machines. Ray became curious about who would need 8 machines and decided to visit the restaurant himself. The restaurant was in San Bernardino, California, run by 2 brothers named Dick and Mac McDonald. When Ray arrived, he saw something that genuinely impressed him. The restaurant operated like nothing he had seen before. Instead of the traditional restaurant model where customers sat down and waited for customized orders, the McDonald brothers had created an assembly line system. One worker focused only on grilling burger patties, another only added condiments, someone else handled the fries. The menu was extremely limited, just burgers, fries, and milkshakes. But this simplicity meant speed. Orders came out in about 15 seconds. The system was efficient, the quality was consistent, and customers clearly loved it. There was a steady line of people, but nobody waited long. Ray immediately recognized the potential. This wasn't just a successful restaurant. This was a reproducible system. It could work in other cities. It could become a chain. Ray approached the brothers and proposed that he franchise their concept across America. The brothers were hesitant because they had tried franchising before without much success. But Ray was persistent, and eventually they agreed to let him manage the franchising operation. In 1955, Ray opened his first McDonald's in Des Plaines, Illinois. He replicated the brothers' system exactly. Same streamlined menu, same assembly line approach, same focus on speed and consistency. It worked. People responded well to the concept. Ray began opening more locations. The franchise grew steadily. By 1960, there were over 200 McDonald's restaurants across the United States. From the outside, everything looked successful. The brand was expanding, customers were coming, the restaurants were busy. But Ray had a problem. Despite owning the franchise rights to over 200 restaurants, he was barely making any money. In fact, he was struggling financially. This seems counterintuitive. How could someone with 200 restaurants be struggling? The answer lies in how franchise businesses typically work. In a standard franchise model, the franchisee pays an upfront fee to get the rights to operate under the brand name. For McDonald's, this was around $45,000. Then the franchisee pays ongoing royalties, usually a percentage of monthly sales. McDonald's was charging 1.9% of sales. So if a restaurant generated $100,000 in monthly revenue, McDonald's corporate received $1,900. From that amount, McDonald's had to cover the cost of supporting the franchisees, providing training, maintaining quality standards, marketing the brand, and running the corporate operations. When you do the math, the margins were extremely thin. 200 restaurants generating roughly $2,000 each per month meant about $400,000 in monthly revenue for McDonald's corporate. But the operational expenses consumed most of that. Ray wasn't getting rich. He was barely breaking even. The business was growing but not profitable in the way he had hoped. This was frustrating and financially stressful. In 1960, Ray met a man named Harry Sunnybon. Harry was a financial consultant with a deep understanding of corporate finance. Ray explained his situation to Harry. He described the franchise model, the thin profit margins, the financial pressure despite the growing number of locations. Harry listened carefully and then asked Ray a straightforward question. He asked what business Ray thought he was in. Ray answered that he was in the hamburger business. This seemed obvious. McDonald's sold hamburgers. But Harry disagreed. He told Ray that he shouldn't be in the hamburger business. He should be in the real estate business. Ray was confused by this. Real estate didn't seem relevant to running a restaurant chain. But Harry explained his thinking. And as he did, Ray began to understand the brilliance of the idea. Harry pointed out that every McDonald's franchise required a physical location. The franchisee needed land and a building. Under the current model, franchisees found their own locations. They either purchased property or leased it from landlords. McDonald's corporate had no involvement in the real estate. The company just provided the franchise rights and operational support. Harry suggested changing this completely. His proposal was to create a separate real estate company under the McDonald's umbrella. This company would acquire properties in desirable locations, either by purchasing land or securing long-term leases. Then McDonald's would sublease these properties to franchisees at a markup. For example, if McDonald's leased a property for $2,000 per month, they might charge the franchisee $2,800 per month. That $800 difference would be pure profit for McDonald's, and it would be recurring revenue that came in regardless of how well the restaurant performed. Ray immediately saw the potential, but raised an obvious concern. Where would McDonald's get the capital to buy all this real estate? The company didn't have significant cash reserves. Harry had an answer for this too. He proposed using leverage, which means using borrowed money to make investments. Harry's plan was to approach insurance companies and banks. These institutions had large amounts of capital that they needed to invest in safe, stable assets. Real estate in good locations was exactly the kind of investment they looked for. Harry would pitch them on the idea that lending money to McDonald's for real estate purchases was low risk. Property values historically increased over time. If McDonald's somehow failed to repay the loans, the lenders would still own valuable real estate. The downside risk was minimal. This strategy turned out to work. Insurance companies were willing to provide financing. McDonald's didn't need to use Ray's personal money or even company profits. They could use borrowed capital to acquire property, then generate income from that property that more than covered the loan payments. This is the power of leverage in corporate finance. You use other people's money to acquire assets that generate returns. In 1961, McDonald's established a subsidiary called Franchise Realty Corporation, specifically to handle real estate operations. From this point forward, the business model transformed completely. When someone wanted to open a McDonald's franchise, the process now involved McDonald's corporate finding and controlling the location. The franchisee still paid the upfront franchise fee of $45,000. They still paid the ongoing royalty of 1.9% of sales. But now, they also paid rent to McDonald's for the property, and this rent was marked up from whatever McDonald's was paying. Suddenly, McDonald's had 3 income streams instead of 1. The franchise fee provided upfront capital. The sales royalty provided ongoing revenue tied to business performance. And the rent provided steady, predictable income that wasn't dependent on burger sales. If a franchise had a slow month, the rent still came in. If a franchise was wildly successful, the rent still came in at the same amount, though the royalty would increase. This rental income turned out to be the most important stream. It was consistent, it wasn't tied to the volatile restaurant business, and because real estate values tend to appreciate over time, the underlying asset was becoming more valuable even as it generated income. Within just a few years of implementing this model, McDonald's financial situation completely changed. Ray went from struggling to make ends meet to building genuine wealth. There's another important part of this story that happened around the same time. In 1961, Ray decided he wanted complete control of McDonald's without the McDonald brothers involved. The brothers still had ownership rights and some say in how the business operated. They tended to be more conservative about expansion. Ray had bigger ambitions and wanted freedom to execute his vision without needing their approval. Ray offered to buy out the McDonald brothers completely. The agreed upon price was $2.7 million, which was a substantial sum in 1961. The brothers accepted the offer. However, there were complications in how the deal was structured. The contract involved some legal technicalities regarding real estate assets. The brothers believed they were selling their entire stake in the business, but the way the agreement was written, certain real estate holdings, including the land under the original San Bernardino restaurant, ended up remaining under Ray's control rather than being part of what the brothers received payment for. When the brothers later realized how this had worked out, they were upset. They felt that Ray had taken advantage of them. From their perspective, the deal hadn't been as straightforward as they thought. From Ray's perspective, the contract was what it was, and in business, you need to understand what you're signing. This remains a controversial aspect of the McDonald's story. Some people view Ray as having been unfairly ruthless with the brothers who created the original concept. Others view it as simply smart business, where Ray ensured he controlled the most valuable assets. Regardless of the ethical debate, the practical outcome was clear. Ray now had complete control of McDonald's and could execute the real estate-focused strategy without any constraints. The company expanded aggressively throughout the 1960s as new franchises opened regularly. But unlike the earlier expansion, where each new restaurant barely moved the financial needle for corporate, now each new location represented a new property under McDonald's control and a new stream of rental income. Then something happened in the 1970s that made the real estate strategy even more valuable. The United States went through a period of high inflation. Prices for goods and services increased significantly. Wages went up, and real estate values skyrocketed. Properties that McDonald's had acquired in the 1960s for relatively modest amounts suddenly became worth multiples of the purchase price. This is what's called asset appreciation. When you own property and general price levels increase, the property becomes more valuable. Meanwhile, if you borrowed money to buy that property, you're paying back the loan with dollars that are worth less due to inflation. So McDonald's was in an ideal position. They had acquired extensive real estate holdings using borrowed money. The debt was being repaid with inflated dollars, but the properties themselves had dramatically increased in value. The company's net worth expanded substantially during this period, almost entirely due to real estate appreciation rather than restaurant operations. By 1980, McDonald's operated over 6,000 locations globally. Ray Kroc had become one of the wealthiest individuals in America. The company was unquestionably successful, but most people, including most business analysts at the time, still thought of McDonald's primarily as a restaurant chain that sold hamburgers and fries. Then in the 1990s, some financial analysts took a closer look at McDonald's revenue and profit sources. They wanted to understand the actual business model in detail. What they discovered was remarkable. When you broke down where McDonald's income actually came from, approximately 90% was related to real estate. Only about 10% came from the traditional franchise fees and sales royalties tied to selling food. This was a stunning realization. The world's largest and most recognized fast food chain, the company that symbolized American hamburgers globally, was making almost all of its money not from food but from property ownership and rental income. McDonald's had become, in essence, a real estate company that happened to have restaurants on its properties. This model has continued to the present day. As of 2024, McDonald's owns or controls real estate assets worth over $40 billion. This real estate portfolio is more valuable than the total market capitalization of many large corporations. When you visit a McDonald's anywhere in the world, there's a high probability that McDonald's corporate owns the land and building, and the person operating the restaurant is leasing it from them while also paying franchise fees and royalties. This is why McDonald's has remained so stable and profitable over decades. The restaurant industry is notoriously difficult. Consumer tastes change. Economic conditions affect dining out. Competition is intense. Many restaurant chains have failed or struggled. But McDonald's weathered all of this relatively well because their financial foundation wasn't primarily dependent on selling food. It was dependent on owning valuable real estate in prime locations. The rent comes in whether a particular location has a great month or a slow month. The property values generally appreciate over time regardless of short-term restaurant performance. McDonald's built a business with a very stable financial base underneath the more volatile restaurant operations happening on the surface. This strategy has worked across different countries and markets. When McDonald's expanded internationally to places like Japan, the UK, Canada, and eventually India, the core model remained focused on real estate. They adapted menus to local tastes. In India, for example, they eliminated beef and added vegetarian options, but the financial structure was always about controlling prime commercial locations and generating rental income from franchisees. So what can we actually learn from this? There are several important principles that come out of the McDonald's story that apply broadly to business and finance. First, the apparent business and the actual business are sometimes different things. If you only looked at what McDonald's sells, you would think it's a food company. But when you look at where the profit comes from, it's clearly a real estate company. This happens in many industries. The successful businesses often make money in ways that aren't immediately obvious. Understanding the real business model matters if you're investing in a company, competing with a company, or trying to build your own business. Second, leverage is an extremely powerful financial tool when used properly. Ray Kroc didn't need to be personally wealthy to build a real estate empire. He used borrowed money from insurance companies and banks to acquire properties. As long as the rental income exceeded the loan payments and the properties appreciated in value, this strategy created wealth. This is how most large fortunes and successful companies are built. They use other people's capital intelligently. Third, owning assets that appreciate over time is more valuable than just generating income. McDonald's could have focused purely on getting higher franchise fees or higher royalty percentages from sales. But real estate provided both ongoing income and asset appreciation. Over decades, this creates much more value. Fourth, multiple revenue streams create business stability. McDonald's doesn't rely on just one source of income. They have franchise fees, sales royalties, and rental income. When one stream underperforms, others can compensate. This diversification makes the overall business more resilient. Fifth, control over critical assets gives you control over the business. The McDonald brothers created the operational system for fast food, but Ray Kroc controlled the real estate. In the long run, the person who controlled the land controlled the company. This principle applies across industries. Identify what the truly critical asset is in your business or industry, and make sure you control it. And finally, long-term thinking can lead to massive outcomes that aren't apparent in the short term. Ray was 52 when he started with McDonald's. The real estate strategy took years to implement fully. The biggest financial payoff from property appreciation didn't come until the 1970s, 15 to 20 years after Ray started. Most people give up too early or think too short term. Ray and Harry thought in decades. Ray Kroc died in 1984. By then, he had built one of the most valuable and recognized companies in the world. The McDonald brothers, Dick and Mac, lived much quieter lives after selling their stake. They never achieved the wealth or recognition that Ray did. People still debate whether Ray treated them fairly. The truth is probably that business at this level involves difficult decisions and sometimes ruthless behavior. Success requires not just good ideas, but also shrewd financial strategy and willingness to make tough calls. Today, McDonald's serves nearly 70 million customers every day across more than 100 countries. It's one of the most recognized brands on earth. Children around the world know the Golden Arches. But underneath all of that, underneath the Happy Meals and Big Macs, is a sophisticated real estate operation generating billions of dollars in steady rental income from prime commercial properties worldwide. The franchisees work hard every day managing restaurants, hiring employees, serving customers, dealing with all the operational challenges of the food business. Meanwhile, McDonald's corporate collects rent checks from 40,000 locations around the globe. It's a brilliant model. Once you understand it, you see business differently. That's the real story of McDonald's. Not just an inspiring tale about an American entrepreneur and fast food, but a sophisticated case study in corporate finance, strategic thinking, asset control, and the power of seeing opportunities that others miss. Ray Kroc and Harry Sunnyborn saw beyond the obvious. Everyone else saw hamburgers, they saw real estate. That insight created a $40 billion empire. Now here's an interesting question to consider. Everything I just described happened through human decision-making. Ray Kroc had intuition and drive. Harry Sunnyborn had creative financial insight. They made decisions based on experience, gut feeling, and analysis of the information available to them in the 1950s and 60 seconds. They made some brilliant choices and probably some mistakes along the way. But what if things had been different? What if instead of human decision-makers, McDonald's had been guided by artificial intelligence from the very beginning? Imagine if in 1954, Ray Kroc had access to an AI system that could analyze demographic data, predict urban development patterns, optimize location selection, forecast inflation and real estate appreciation, and model different business strategies. Would McDonald's be even bigger today? Would the company be worth twice as much? Could AI have identified the real estate opportunity even earlier? Or would AI have missed certain insights that required human creativity? These aren't just hypothetical questions about the past. They're actually about the future. Right now, in 2026, artificial intelligence is becoming powerful enough to help make complex business decisions. Companies are starting to use AI for strategy, for predicting market trends, for optimizing operations. The question every business faces is how much to rely on AI versus human judgment. Would an AI-run McDonald's have been more successful than the human-run version? Or would it have failed in ways we can't predict? What would AI have done differently in the 1960s, 70 seconds, 80 seconds, and beyond? How would it have handled challenges like inflation, competition, international expansion, and changing consumer preferences? We're going to explore exactly that scenario in a second video. We'll walk through the entire McDonald's timeline again, but this time with AI making the decisions from 1954 forward. We'll see what an artificially intelligent system would have done differently, where it might have succeeded better than humans, and where it might have failed. It's a fascinating thought experiment that reveals a lot about both business strategy and the capabilities and limitations of AI.so that's coming in the next part. Until then, have a great day and take care.